Hello, hello. Welcome, fellow witches and wizards. My name is Phoenix Jenny, and welcome back to Storytime Saturday, number 3. We're going to be reading chapters 5 and 6 from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and we'll be discussing it along the way, as usual. Hopefully the sound is good. I'm wearing headphones because I'm going to be playing Harry Potter music in the background. Funny story, YouTube never copy struck me at all. Didn't copyright claim me at all for the last video. And I'm thinking it's because the song was so quiet YouTube couldn't hear it. So I'm tweaking with the settings a little bit. So I'm gonna see if the video, my recording software, picks up the song better, picks up the music better this time, with my headphones in, because I want to be able to hear it, and I don't know how loud it is, because coming through my speaker, I can't tell how loud you guys can hear it. Headphones are usually how it works. I play music during my regular streams. When I'm playing The Sims, I play copyright-free music, and I listen with my headphones, and it works great. So I'm thinking this will work this way. If this is the first time you're joining us, I will let you know that this isn't a normal, just everyday reading of Harry Potter. This isn't an audiobook. This is me reading it and analyzing it as I go. We'll stop every once in a while, and I'll share my thoughts about a particular passage or whatever I just read. And there will be spoilers. So if you've never read this book before, or any of the books or the movies or whatever, there will be spoilers. I will be referring to everything and anything. So there's that. Please get comfortable and relax. I'm going to read to you, and I'll do voices and accents, and I will have some Harry Potter music playing in the background. Get a drink. I would like to have a hot chocolate right now, but I actually just have water. I didn't drink my water today, so I'm going to be drinking this. But get comfortable, get a hot drink, and relax. Get cozy. This is live, so if you have any comments or questions for me or about the book, what we're reading, you can talk to me live in the comment section right over there. Just type it in, and I will read it as soon as I get it, or probably during the intermission, since I'll be reading something else. If you're watching this video after the fact, please comment down below any comments or questions or suggestions or whatever you like. Click the like button. You can do that right now. If you're watching live, you can click the like button, and YouTube will know that you like it, and it'll share the stream with someone else so I get more viewers. Also, if you're watching the video after the fact, please click the like button. It's the thumbs up button right below the screen. If you're not subscribed yet, click subscribe and click the little bell icon next to the subscription button so that you know when I go live and when I post videos. YouTube will notify you on your phone or on your whatever device that you're using. I stream regularly, so if this is the first time you're seeing me and you'd like to see more of me, I stream usually every day except Wednesday and Sunday. This week's gonna be a little bit different because it's Christmas. So I will be streaming Monday and Tuesday, but I won't be streaming. I don't normally stream on Wednesdays, but no stream on Wednesday. There won't be any stream Thursday or Friday either, because Friday's Christmas Eve. I'll be at church, and then Thursday's Christmas Eve. I'll be at church, and Friday's Christmas Day. I'll be with my parents. Now I've been telling you guys for the past 2 other videos. Hey, I'm not streaming on Saturday. We won't get to Hogwarts until next year because I won't be streaming on Saturday, because I totally thought that Saturday was Christmas. Christmas is actually on Friday, right? Oh, I just realized I forgot. There's a couple things I was going to look up before the stream, and I forgot to do that. Maybe I'll do that during the stream. How about that? 1 second. I'm going to look it up. I'm just going to make sure that I'm right about this. December December 2020 calendar. Am I right about when Christmas is? Yes, Christmas is Friday. Christmas Eve is the Thursday beforehand. Yes, I am right. Okay. So no stream Thursday or Friday, but I still will be pushing out content. What I'm going to do next week is I'm going to read Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, not live. I'm just going to record myself doing it, and I will push out those videos. There will be a video a day, Monday through Friday, because there are 5 staves or chapters in A Christmas Carol, so I'll read one a day, and I will be posting that Monday through Friday. So be on the lookout for that. But join me for my stream on Monday. We play The Sims, we'll be playing Nifty Knitting, we'll be having a good time. If you watch my other streams, you'll know that I'm considering getting Cyberpunk and streaming that. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do a little bit more research into the game, see if I want to spend $60 on it. And but I'll let you know when my plans change, and I'll be streaming that. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's everything I wanted to mention. Yeah, so without further ado, we will read chapter 5. You can't see my earrings? I have snitch earrings on today. I have enough Harry Potter jewelry to wear something different like every stream, but Harry Potter shirts. I have a ton of Harry Potter shirts. They just don't fit me anymore. I don't throw them away. I don't like to throw my Harry Potter shirts away, but I've had them since high school and they don't fit. So so I have like 2 Harry Potter shirts that fit right now. This isn't one of them. This is a PewDiePie shirt. I am a subscriber of PewDiePie, so I have one of his shirts. Costs like an arm and a leg, but it was for the 1 billion, well, however many it was. I can't read it. His recent, like, huge, mile marker. Anyway, you don't care. I lost my place. Where am I? Okay. Chapter 5, Diagon Alley. Oh, I should probably start my music. Okay. This song's a little quiet. It might also be a little intense at some points for the moment. I can't hear it currently. Yeah, it is a quiet song. It just started out quiet. Yeah, that's why my headphones are in. If you're just tuning in, that's because I want to hear the music. I can't hear the music. Maybe you guys can, but I can't, so I want to be able to hear it. Okay. Chapter 5, Diagon Alley. This chapter is a particularly long chapter, so strap in. Okay. Harry awoke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamt a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard. That sounds absolutely crazy if you didn't know what the story was. Like, I don't know. He sounds insane. A giant called Hagrid came and told me I was going to wizard school. Anyway. Oh, I forgot. There's things that I wrote down that I was like, oh, I should look this up. Because I didn't know what they were. Huh. Well, remember in the previous chapters where I said I think that knickerbockers are socks, but I didn't know. And then I looked it up once before, and I might have gotten it wrong. But I'm going to look it up now. It's because Dudley had a Knickerbocker Glory. That's what it was called. And that's like the second thing that popped up in the search engine right here. Is Knickerbocker Glory. That's funny. Anyway, what is a Knickerbocker? What is a Knickerbocker? Are they pants? That's what it looks like. Why did I think they were socks? They're a special kind of trouser, it looks like. These are images. That's why I'm confused. Knickerbocker store. Knickerbockers or knickers are a form of men's or boys' baggy knee trousers, particularly popular in the early 20th century United States. Really? Golfers +2s and +4s are breeches of these type. Before World War II, skiers often wore knickerbockers too, usually ankle length. Okay, so they're like really old-fashioned baggy pants. That's what they are. Okay, thank you. They're not socks. I don't know why I thought they were, but they're not. Okay, good. So there's that. Then I was gonna look up mugwump. Music is still quite quiet. Mugwump. A person who remains aloof or independent, especially from party politics. Okay. We were looking that up because Dumbledore, that's like one of his titles. It was on the letter that he got. Where's that letter? Supreme Mugwump. So Dumbledore is a Supreme Mugwump. I'm pretty sure that has more of a title-like meaning in Harry Potter. I don't know what it is. It's never explained. But the literal word Mugwump is a person who remains aloof or independent, especially from party politics. I guess it's an independent political party, more or less. I don't know. Anyway, but there's that. I hope the music is okay. I don't want to touch the music. I made it a little louder. I hope that's okay. Okay. If it's not, feel free to let me know in the comments. Okay. Maybe I will put it back. Because this music is a little intense for the scene that we have going on here. And there was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Sounds like it was a good idea. I turned the music down. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that. Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl. Pay him, Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 knuts, said Hagrid sleepily. Knuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out his leg so Harry could put the money into a small leather pouch tied to it. Then he flew off through the open window. Hagrid yawned loudly, sat up, and stretched. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Gotta get up to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. I haven't got any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. Do you think your parents didn't leave you anything? You're rich, Harry! You're rich and famous! But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts Wizard Bank. Have a sausage, they're not bad cold, and I wouldn't say no to a bit of your birthday cake neither. Birthday cake for breakfast is best breakfast. Wizards have banks? Just the one, Gringotts, run by goblins. For the whole wizarding world? No way. That's not a thing. No way, there's gotta be more than one. Goblins? Yeah, so you'd be mad to try and rob it, I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe. Except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts. Anyway, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He usually gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching you, get things for Gringotts. Knows he can trust me, see. Got everything? Come on, then. Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah. We'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now, I've got you. They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. I know, right? Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. If I was to, speed things up a bit, would you mind not mention it at Hogwarts? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off toward land. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells, enchantments. Yeah, you would be mad to... He has no idea. Isn't that crazy? He's actually going to rob Gringotts at some point. He has no idea. That's like a ways away. Said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dragons guarding the high-security vaults. There is. Don't tell anybody, but there is. And then you gotta find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London Sea, deep under the underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, the Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this, but it was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life. Ministry of Magic, messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Yeah, it's a really great band, too. If you're into Wizard Rock, Ministry of Magic is probably my favorite band in Wizard Rock. Harry asked before he could stop himself. Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler, if ever there was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning, asking for advice. But what does a Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the Muggles, and that's there still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry, everyone be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the hard-board wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper, and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street. Passersby stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? Things these muggles dream up." Eh? Hagrid, said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up. Did you say there are dragons at Gringotts? Well, so they say, said Hagrid. Crikey, I'd like a dragon. You'd like one? Wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go. They'd reached the station. There's a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand muggle money, as he called it, gave the bills to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. Still got your letter, Harry? He asked as he counted stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. Enjoying the song, pardon me. I think that's the last bit. And done?
Give your home a gift from Lowe's, like a Google Nest Hub.
I don't think so. I don't think so, Lowe's. Gonna let the advertisement go a little bit. Good, said Hagrid. There's a list there of everything you need. Harry unfolded a second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Now, years ago, I wrote a fan fiction. It was called... You know what, I couldn't tell you what it was called because the name was very long and complicated. But I wrote a series of journal entries where me and my friends were into all kinds of shenanigans at Hogwarts. So we were Hogwarts students. Harry's clothes had name tags on them. And like, I believe it was... I don't know if I should mention her name. My friend Kelly, she wrote... in the margin, why does Harry have name tags? Like, she was making fun of me for this little detail, essentially. Like he's, you know, like, why, only like, mothers write that on their child's clothing, and Harry doesn't have a mother. Like, why on earth does he have, name tags on his clothes? It's right there. Like, students are supposed to have name tags on their clothes, Kelly. So there, like, it's an explanation from years ago. It's completely irrelevant now, but but yes, I was right, is what I'm trying to say. She'd appreciate it. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Fidelia Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsenius Jaeger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. Made extra popular by the movies now. The movies have almost absolutely nothing to do with the book, which I find interesting, because the book isn't actually a book. It's a textbook. It's essentially just a glossary of magical creatures. Though they've added some creatures in the movie that aren't in the book, I believe. I'm not super familiar with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, so, like, don't quote me on it. Like, I could be completely wrong. I saw the first movie once, and I haven't watched any of the other movies. It's just not my thing, and I'm not super into it. I'm believe it or not, I'm not into the Harry Potter universe for the magic. I'm into it for Harry. Let's be honest. I'm into it for the characters, and if Harry's not in it, I'm not super interested. So, Fantastic Beasts didn't really capture my attention all that much. So, I don't really know a whole lot about it, so feel free to correct me about anything about it, because I know very little. I do remember, though, reading it, and then watching the movie, and thinking, some of those details aren't right. Like, it doesn't match the books. Like, he has a pet. I forget what they're called. They're the creatures that eat wood lice. And they kind of look like sticks. They kind of blend into the wood, and they have spindly fingers. I forget what they're called. The name always escapes me. Bowtruckles. I think he has a pet bowtruckle, and I didn't know it was a bowtruckle because it doesn't look like a bowtruckle at all. It's actually green, and that really confused me because bowtruckles are actually bark colored. They're supposed to blend into trees. They populate trees that have really good wood for wand making, according to the book. According to Harry Potter, which is the ultimate authority on magical creatures, and for whatever reason, they made the bowtruckle green in the movie, and that greatly upset me. Which is dumb. It's not really that upsetting. It's one of those things that's just like, okay, yeah, whatever. But it's one of the things I noticed. Like, they changed little details about certain creatures, and they added creatures. They added, I don't know, the mist thing. I forget what it's called. In fact, like, the name of the mist thing, it comes from the fake publishing company that the book. If you look at the textbook Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, at the bottom of the cover page there is, I have the book. I have Fantastic Beasts Where to Find Them. It's somewhere. I don't know. I still haven't completely unpacked since I moved in here in March. So it's somewhere. But the name of that mist thing that ends up being some sort of dark force in the movies, I forget what it's called. I think it begins with an O, but it's actually named after the printing press, the imaginary printing press of the textbook that you'll see on the cover page at the bottom. Interesting fact. But again, I could have my details a little mixed up. Feel free to correct me in the comments, because I'm not super familiar with the series Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Okay, so there's that. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment, 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter standard size 2, 1 set glass of crystal vials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. And it's also interesting, I guess it would make sense, but there's way more detail about certain things in the first book than there is any other book. I'm not even sure we get supplies listed in other books. We might. I don't really remember them. They're not particularly memorable, but we get all these details about what a student should bring to Hogwarts. Probably because it's common knowledge. The older you get, the more often you go to Hogwarts, the more you know what to bring. So it's less obvious, less mentioned. Can we buy all this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before. I have. I remember it fondly, actually. Yeah, I actually wrote, I'm currently working on a big mystery novel. I'm working on a smaller mystery novel for my Patreon, but I'm working on a bigger mystery novel, and there is a whole section right in the center, because the book takes place in England. There's a whole section right in the center dedicated to London and all my experiences, and it's an experience that I treasure and I'll never forget. I won't spoil it, though, so if you want to know about my trip to London, maybe you'll read the book when I publish it. So, or you can just ask me if you want to know about it. But, yeah, it was one of the best experiences of my life. One of the most memorable, happy time in my life when I got to go to London. Would love to go again someday. Absolutely plan on it. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the underground. Okay, funny story. That actually happened to me too. I feel so embarrassed thinking about it now, but I got stuck in one of those too. I couldn't get my ticket to work. And when you're watching those little flaps open, you think, they're open long enough. I could get through there. I just have to go really fast. No, don't try it, especially if you're wearing a backpack, because my backpack got stuck in the flap thing. Don't try it. Don't. But I actually did get stuck in this thing. And complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains too slow. I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic, he said, as they climbed a broken-down escalator that led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowds easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger restaurants and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it could sell you a magic wand. This was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spellbooks and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? No way. The Dursleys are not nearly this imaginative. If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in a corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old bartender, who was quite bald and looked like a toothless walnut. The low buzz of chatter... Wait, hold on. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old bartender, who was quite bald and looked like a toothless walnut. Isn't that interesting? Now, I actually wrote a paper about the adaptations of the books to movies, of the Harry Potter books to movies for college. Actually, I took a special topics Harry Potter class in college, and for my final paper, I did a whole research paper dedicated to the idea that the movies do accurately portray the books, even in ways that aren't immediately obvious. There's a lot of polls that have been done, and it's argued that the most beloved Harry Potter book is Prisoner of Azkaban. Not for me personally, but lots of people love Prisoner of Azkaban. But for that reason, the movie Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is one of the most disliked. I don't think it is the most disliked. I think Order of the Phoenix is probably the most disliked. But because the book is so beloved, the movie people are more critical of it because they expected it to match the book a lot better, and they argue that it doesn't. I argue that it does in my paper. That the movie actually does portray the book very well. And it's just interesting how a lot of people hate the movie Prisoner of Azkaban because it doesn't get a lot of the details right. Interestingly, that movie is the only movie that gets Tom the bartender right. Here, it says that Tom the bartender... Oh, it doesn't say that that's his name. That's his name, Tom. That the bartender looks like a toothless... Well, he's a balding, toothless, walnut-looking guy. That's exactly what he looks like in Prisoner of Azkaban. He looks like a well-established, nice, friendly-looking gentleman with hair. And all the other times, I think we only ever see him in the first one. He looks nothing like this in the movie for the first one, but in the third one, he looks exactly like this. And I just think it's interesting that the movie that people claim don't reflect the book the most actually does in this one little detail. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the bartender reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid." "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the bartender, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The leaky cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old bartender. "Harry Potter. What an honor." He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed toward Harry, and seized his hand, tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Welcome back." Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the leaky cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter. Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Daedalus Diggle. Yes, Daedalus Diggle. We'll meet him again later. Very later. Much, much later. I've seen you before," said Harry as Daedalus Diggle's top hat fell off in his excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers!" cried Daedalus Diggle, looking around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me!" Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts." "Potter," stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. "Can tell how pleased I am to meet you." "What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell?" "Defense against the dark arts," muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not talk about it.
That's either. It's a spaceship that we hope will be our future.
Second. We don't want none of that. As though he'd rather not think about it. Interesting. Well, spoiler alert, Quirrell's the bad guy. So I wonder if he really doesn't want to think about it, because he probably doesn't appreciate Defense Against the Dark Arts. He might rather be teaching the dark arts. No, not that you need it, eh, Potter? He laughed nervously. "You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself." Twilight. That's what I wrote in my book. He's going to pick up Twilight. Don't lie, Professor Quirrell. That's what you're getting. He looked terrified at the very thought. I just love, reading this. I might mention this a couple more times, but if you have never seen it, I highly encourage that you, after the stream, go on YouTube and look up a Harry Potter musical. A Harry Potter musical is... When I first heard about it, I was very hesitant to watch it because I thought all they're going to do is make fun of Harry Potter. It's going to be really dumb and annoying, and I just don't want to be a part of that. Until one of my good friends from college actually showed it to me, and I couldn't stop watching it. Like, it is so good. It is so funny. It is so well done. It makes fun of Harry Potter, but in the best way. In the way that fans do anyway. They clearly love the source material. They make fun of it in a good way. They have lots of funny jokes. It's not family friendly, I will mention that. But it is really, really good. And the acting is really top-notch. Music is perfection. It is so good. Watch the first one and the second one and the third one. They're all very, very good. If you love Harry Potter, you will love this musical that these people have made. I've watched it over and over. I know most of the songs by heart. And I think of Professor Quirrell and Voldemort are done so well. It's the only time where you'll ever say Voldemort and Umbridge were your favorite characters. Because you would never say that from the books and the movies. But in these plays, Voldemort and Umbridge are the best characters. They're both played by Joe Walker, and he's amazing. So funny, so talented. It is so good. And so I was just thinking, oh, Quirrell! When I read his name. Quirrell, man, listen. Sorry. Anyway, go watch it. So good, so funny. And I guarantee that I will mention it more times as I go through these books. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself head over the babble. Must get on, lost her by. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford took Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into a small, walled courtyard where there was nothing but a trash can and a few weeds. Also interesting to remember that all these people lining up to shake his hand are going to think differently as the books go on. You'll see how very fickle people are when it comes to celebrities, and how the minute somebody says something bad about them, their opinions change. It's just interesting how, as we get on to later books, these people won't be lining up to shake his hand anymore. And that'll go back and forth as we go as well. Hagrid grinned at Harry. Told you, didn't I? Told you were famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling. He doesn't tremble in the play, does he? Professor Quirrell? No, he doesn't. Is he always that nervous? Oh yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest. There's a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of students, scared his own subject. Now where's my umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the trash can. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. Right. Stand back, Harry. He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered. It wriggled. In the middle, a small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough even for Hagrid, an archway onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned out of sight. Welcome, said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrink instantly back into solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a sign hanging over them. Yeah, you'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we gotta get your money first. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary was shaking her head as they passed, saying, Dragon liver, 17 sickles an ounce, they're mad. I always think, when I read this part, I always think about J.K. Rowling and the way she felt when she first walked onto the set for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. They wanted to show her the set of Diagon Alley, and so she walked onto it and she immediately started crying because it was exactly how she imagined, and it was brought to life for her before her very eyes. Now you can actually go to Diagon Alley at Universal Studios. I have yet to go to that one. I have been to Universal Studios, but I've been to the Hogsmeade part. It was long before the Diagon Alley part was even built, but I do plan on going back. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if I ever get married, that's where we go for our honeymoon. I don't know. But I would really like to go back and see the Diagon Alley part. And do the Hogsmeade part, again, over and over. I would go back anytime, for any reason. A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying Aelop's Owl Emporium. Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy. Several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks in it. Look, Harry heard one of them say, the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever. There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel's eyes, tottering piles of spellbooks, quills, and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. Gringotts, said Hagrid. They had reached a snowy white building that towered over the other little shops, standing beside its burnished bronze doors. Burnished. Standing beside its burnished bronze doors. What does burnished mean? Polished by rubbing. Oh, it means polished. Cool. Dope. Now you know. Means polished. I figured that's what it meant. Wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold was... Yeah, that's a goblin, said Hagrid quietly as they walked up the white stone steps toward him. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with words engraved upon them. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there. I actually had this on my bedroom door as a teenager. It's quite memorable. Like I said, you'd be mad to try and rob it, said Hagrid. The pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins in brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. Morning, said Hagrid to a free goblin. We've come to take some money out of Mr. Harry Potter's safe. You have his key, sir? Got it here somewhere, said Hagrid, and he started emptying his pockets onto the counter, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin out on their right, weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. Got it, said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. That seems to be in order. And I've also got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore, said Hagrid importantly, throwing out his chest. It's about the you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. Very well, he said, handing it back to Hagrid. I will have someone take you down to both vaults. Grabhook! Grabhook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pockets, he and Harry followed Griphook toward one of the doors leading off the hall. I will mention this. When I was taking my Special Topics Harry Potter class in college, there was something that my professor noted out of all the books, is that there is connections between certain books. And it's done very well. So if you know, there are 7 Harry Potter books, and it kind of makes a pyramid as to like, you know, how stories have a natural arc for things and the progression of the story. So, you know, you have 1, 2, and 3 are the rising action, and 4 is the climax, and 5, 6, and 7 is the falling action. More or less. The 4 is definitely, book 4 is definitely the turning point for the entire series. And what she noticed is that, I wish I could somehow show you, imagine points on a pyramid where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 and 7 have connecting factors. 2 and 6 have connecting factors, and 3 and 5 have connecting factors. And then 4 actually has connecting factors with 1 and 7. So in the first one, the 4th one, and the 7th one all feature dragons of some sort. And the 1st and the 7th books both have Griphook in them. And there's other things too. Like they're like mirroring each other. Which is super interesting, and I don't know how J.K. Rowling sat down and figured all this out, but there's other stuff too, and I'll mention them when we come across them. Did I read that? I probably did. What's the you-know-what in Vault 713? Harry asked. Can't tell you that, said Hagrid mysteriously. Very secret. Hogwarts business. Dumbledore's trusted me. More than me job's worth to tell you that. Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. Also, Gringotts is specially featured in the first one and the seventh one. There was a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downward, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks toward them. They climbed in. Hagrid, with some difficulty, and were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left. Left, right, right, left, middle fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way because Griphook wasn't steering. That sounds really fun. That sounds like a super fun roller coaster I'd want to try. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of a passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon. But too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and floor. I never know, Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite? Stalagmite's got an M in it, said Hagrid. And don't ask me questions just now. I think I'm going to be sick. I love that answer. Stalagmite's got an M in it. Duh. I know the difference. If you don't know the difference, here it is. Stalactites are pointy formations that drip from the ceiling. They're the ceiling ones. They're formed from water and sediment, slowly dripping down over time, and the cold kind of freezes them and forms them into points. So over time, they make these sort of like fangs drip down from the ceiling. Those are stalactites. Stalagmites.
Home, a gift from Lowe's. Like a Google
Lowe's,
Nest
leave
Hub,
us
now
alone.
just $69.99.
Stalagmites are the same kind of formations, but they form upward, and they can be on the walls or the floor. And usually those are formed from stalactites. Stalagmites are usually formed from stalactites, water dripping from the stalactites and building upwards on the stalagmites. Stalactites are the ones from the ceiling. They're holding on tight, if you will. Stalagmites are on the floor. And I think they can form on the walls too, but mostly on the floor, I believe. In case you don't know, now you know. He did look very green, and when the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees from trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out, as it cleared, Harry gasped. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze knuts. All yours, smiled Hagrid. All Harry's. It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they'd have had it from him faster than blinking. How often had they complained how much Harry cost them to keep? And all the time there had been a small fortune belonging to him buried deep under London. It better be a lot of money, because it lasts him at least until he's an adult. Because he's always pulling money from it. Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. The gold ones are galleons, he explained. 17 silver sickles to a galleon, and 29 knuts to a sickle. It's easy enough. Right, that should be enough for a couple of terms. Okay. We'll keep the rest safe for you. He turned to Griphook. Volt 713 now, please. And can we go more slowly? 1 speed only, said Griphook. They were going even deeper now and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled round tight corners. They went rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leaned over the side to try to see what was down at the dark bottom, but Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruff of his neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. "Stand back," said Griphook importantly. He stroked the door gently with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. "If anyone but a Gringotts goblin tried that, they'd be stuck through the door and trapped in there," said Griphook. "How often do you check to see if anyone's inside?" Harry asked. "About once every 10 years, said Griphook with a rather nasty grin. Something really extraordinary had to be inside this top-secret vault, Harry was sure, and he leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least. But at first he thought it was empty. Then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped up in brown paper lying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but knew better than to ask. "Come on, back in this infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best if I keep my mouth shut," said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, they stood blinking in the sunlight outside Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first now that he had a bag full of money. He didn't have to know how many gallons there were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he'd had in his whole life, more money than even Dudley had ever had. "Might as well get your uniform," said Hagrid, nodding toward Madame Malkins's robes for all occasions. "Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up in the Leaky Cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts." He did still look a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Malkins's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malkin was a squat, smiling witch dressed all in mauve, or however you pronounce that word. "Hogwarts, dear?" she said, when Harry started to speak. "Got the lot here. Another young man being fitted up just now, in fact." "Oh, I love this part. Okay. In the back of the shop, a boy with a pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Malkin stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. Oh my gosh. It always gets more interesting when Draco Malfoy enters the scene. Always, always, always. As annoying and awful as he is. He does make the scene quite interesting. "Hello," said the boy. "Hogwarts too?" "Yes," said Harry. "My father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands," said the boy. He had a bored, drawling voice. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow." Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. "Have you got your own broom?" the boy went on. "No," said Harry. "Play Quidditch at all?" "No," said Harry again, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. "I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet?" "No," said Harry, feeling more stupid by the minute. Wouldn't Draco know? Wouldn't he know how to get sorted? "I don't know." "Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you?" Oh my goodness. Sorry, Hufflepuffs. It's so sad. It's okay. It's okay. You're still wanted. Mauve. Yeah. Actually, I remember when I was reading, when my teacher read us the first book, she pronounced Hermione wrong. She pronounced it Hermione, I think. But yeah, no, it is pronounced Hermione. Yeah, and the pronunciation of mauve, it's mauve. Is it mauve? Okay, at least I think that's how you pronounce that. Thank you for that, Julia. Uh, let's see. Said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. I say, look at that man, said the boy suddenly, nodding toward the front window. Hagrid was standing there, grinning at Harry and pointing at 2 large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He works at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy. I've heard of him. He's a sort of servant, isn't he? He's the gamekeeper, said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less every second. Yes, exactly. I've heard he's a sort of savage. Lives in a hut on the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk, tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coldly. Do you? Said the boy with a slight sneer. Why is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't feel much like going into the matter with this boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not sounding sorry at all. I have a note here in my book, and I don't know what it means. NBD. What does that mean? That might be a reference to another book, and I'm forgetting what book that's in reference to, or story, or play, or whatever. But they were our kind, weren't they? They were a witch and wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they got the letter, imagine. I think they should keep it in the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyway? Oh my gosh, I wish he had told him. He's gonna be like, oh, bye! Oh man! I would have loved to see the look on his face if he told him who he was. Anyway. But before Harry could answer, Madame Malkin said, That's you done, my dear, said Harry. And Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy, hopped down from the footstool. Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose, said the drawling boy. Harry was rather quiet as he ate the ice cream Hagrid had bought him. Chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. Except the chopped nuts. Not into chopped nuts. What's up? Said Hagrid. Nothing, Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills. Harry cheered up a bit when he found a bottle of ink that changed color as you wrote. That's really cool. When they had left the shop, he said, Hagrid, what's Quidditch? Blimey, Harry, I keep forgetting how little you know. Not knowing about Quidditch. Don't make me feel worse, said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy in Madame Malkin's, and he said people from Muggle families shouldn't even be allowed in. You're not from a Muggle family. If he'd known who you were, he's grown up knowing your name if his parents are wizarding folk. You saw what everyone in the Leaky Cauldron was like when they saw you. Anyway, what does he know about it? Some of the best I ever saw were the only ones with magic in them, and a long line of Muggles. Look at your mom. Look at what she had for a sister. Yeah, Harry's mom is Muggle-born. So what is Quidditch? It's our sport, wizard sport. It's like soccer in the Muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch, played up in the air on broomsticks, and there's 4 balls. It's sort of hard to explain the rules. And what are Slytherin and Hufflepuff? That would be. It would be nice to have an ink that changes color. This is... yeah, Malfoy... I think he's only worse in the books because we see him more often in the books. But they still portray him very well in the movies. Schoolhouses. There's 4. Everyone says Hufflepuff are a lot of duffers, but I bet I'm in Hufflepuff. I don't think J.K. Rowling liked Hufflepuff either. But our Hufflepuff than Slytherin, said Hagrid darkly. There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. That's actually not true. According to J.K. Rowling, of every dark wizard that's ever existed in the wizarding world, every house has produced one except Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff has never produced a dark wizard. But in saying that, it's obvious that they're not all from Slytherin. Some of them are from Ravenclaw and Gryffindor. You know who was one? Well, sorry, you know who was at Hogwarts? Years and years ago, said Hagrid. They bought Harry's school books in a shop called Flourish and Blots, where the shelves were stacked to the ceiling with books as large as paving stones bound in leather, books the size of postage stamps and covers of silk, books full of peculiar symbols, and a few books with nothing in them at all. Even Dudley, who never read anything, would have been wild to get his hands on some of these. Hagrid almost had to drag Harry away from curses and counter-curses, bewitch your friends, befuddle your enemies with the latest revenges, hair loss, jelly legs, tongue-tying, and much, much more, by Professor Vindictus Viridian. What a fitting name. I was trying to find out how to curse Dudley. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but you're not to use magic in the Muggle world except in very special circumstances, said Hagrid. And anyway, you couldn't work any of them curses yet. You'll need a lot more study before you get to that level. Hagrid wouldn't let Harry buy a solid gold cauldron either. It says pewter on your list. But they got a nice set of scales for weighing potion ingredients and a collapsible brass telescope. Then they visited the apothecary, which was fascinating enough to make up for its horrible smell, a mixture of bad eggs and rotted cabbages. Barrels of slimy stuff stood on the floor, jars of herbs, dried roots, and bright powders lined the walls. Bundles of feathers, strings of fangs, and snarled claws hung from the ceiling, while Hagrid asked the man behind the counter for a supply of some basic potion ingredients for Harry. Harry himself examined silver unicorn horns at 21 galleons each and minuscule glittery black beetle eyes, 5 knuts a scoop. Outside the apothecary, Hagrid checked Harry's list again. Just your wand left. Oh yeah, and I still haven't got you a birthday present. Harry felt himself go red. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Tell you what, I'll get your animal. Not a toad. Toads went out of fashion years ago. You'd be laughed at. And I don't like cats. They make me sneeze. I'll get you an owl. All the kids want owls. They're dead useful. Carry your mail and everything. 20 minutes later, they left Aelop's Owl Emporium, which had been dark and full of rustling and flickering, jewel-bright eyes. Harry now carried a large cage that held a beautiful, snowy owl, fast asleep with her head under her wing. He couldn't stop stammering his thanks, sounding like Professor Quirrell. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Also, a mirror concept. You were introduced to Hedwig in this book where we say goodbye to her in Deathly Hallows. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Don't expect you have a lot of presents from them Dursleys. Just Ollivanders left now. Only place for wands, Ollivanders, and you gotta have the best wand.
Visit Minute Clinic at CV.
A magic wand. This was what Harry had been looking forward to. Had been really looking forward to. The last shop was narrow and shabby. Peeling gold letters over the door read, Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in a dusty window. I wouldn't say that Hufflepuffs don't have ambition, but it's still funny though. A tinkling bell rang somewhere in the depths of the shop as they stepped inside. It was a tiny place, empty except for a single spindly chair that Hagrid sat on to wait. Harry felt strangely as though he had entered a very strict library. He swallowed a lot of new questions that had just occurred to him and looked instead at the thousands of narrow boxes piled neatly right up to the ceiling. For some reason, the back of his neck prickled. The very dust and silence in here seemed to tingle with some secret magic. Good afternoon, said a soft voice. Harry jumped. Hagrid must have jumped too. because there's a loud crunching noise, and he got quickly off the spindly chair. An old man was standing before them, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. "Hello," said Harry awkwardly. "Ah, yes," said the man. "Yes, yes. I thought I'd be seeing you soon, Harry Potter." It wasn't a question. "You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself, buying her first wand. 10 1/4 inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work." Mr. Ollivander moved closer to Harry. Harry wished he would blink. Those silvery eyes were a bit creepy. "Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand, 11 inches, pliable, a little more powerful, and excellent for transfiguration," which is interesting, because that is something that Harry's father was rather good at. Actually, we'll learn in Prisoner of Azkaban that Harry's father is an animagus, which is something that he, I don't know, how do you become an animagus? But it is transfiguration magic, and it's something that Harry's father is able to do himself. So he's quite good at it. "Well, I say your father favored it. It's really the one that chooses the wizard, of course." Mr. Ollivander had come so close that he and Harry were almost nose to nose. Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes. "And that's where—" Mr. Ollivander touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead with a long white finger. "I'm sorry to say I sold the one that did it," he said softly. 13 1/2 inches. Powerful one, very powerful. And in the wrong hands. Well, if I'd known what that one was going out into the world to do." Yeah, Voldemort's wand is made of yew, and yew wood is traditionally known for... yew trees are traditionally associated with death. So J.K. Rowling chose that wood for his wand very purposefully. He shook his head, and then, to Harry's relief, spotted Hagrid. Rubius Hagrid, how nice to see you again." "Oak, 16 inches, rather bendy, wasn't it?" "It was, sir, yes," said Hagrid. "Good one, that one. But I suppose they snapped it in half when you got expelled," said Mr. Ollivander, suddenly stern. Yes, they did, sir, yes," said Hagrid, shuffling his feet. "I've still got the pieces, though," he added brightly. "But you don't use them," said Mr. Ollivander sharply. "Oh, no, sir," said Hagrid quickly. Harry noticed he gripped his pink umbrella very tightly as he spoke. Clearly he does. That's why his wand is so magical. He uses it like a wand. His umbrella, I said umbrella. Uses his umbrella like a wand because he somehow put his pieces in the umbrella. I don't know how that works, but... said Mr. Ollivander, giving Hagrid a piercing look. "Well now, Mr. Potter, let me see." He pulled a long tape measure with silver markings out of his pocket. "Which is your wand arm?" Well, I'm right-handed," said Harry. "Hold out your arm. That's it." He measured Harry from shoulder to finger, then wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and round his head. As he measured, he said, "Every Ollivander wand is a core of a powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. And of course you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand." Also, another connection between this one and Deathly Hallows. Ollivander is present and important to the story and the idea of wands and how they work. Harry suddenly realized that the tape measure, which was measuring between his nostrils, was doing this on its own. Mr. Ollivander was flitting around the shelves, taking down boxes. "That will do," he said, and the tape measure crumpled into a heap on the floor. "Right then, Mr. Potter. Try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave." Harry took the wand and, feeling foolish, waved it around a bit, but Mr. Ollivander snatched it out of his hand almost at once. "Maple and phoenix feather. 7 inches. Quite whippy. Try." Harry tried. but he had already raised the wand when it, too, was snatched back by Mr. Ollivander. He's looking for a very specific response, and it'll be almost immediate. No, no. Here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8.5 inches. Springy. Go on, try it out. Harry tried, and he tried. He had no idea what Mr. Ollivander was waiting for. The pile of tried wands was mounting higher and higher on the spindly chair. But the more wands Mr. Ollivander pulled from the shelves, the happier he seemed to become. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry. We'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder now. Yes, why not? Unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand above his head, brought it swishing down through the dusty air, and a stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end like a firework, throwing dancing spots of light onto the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivander cried, "Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed! Oh, very good! Well, well, well! How curious! How very curious!" He put Harry's wand back into its box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, "Curious, curious." "Sorry," said Harry, "but what's curious?" Mr. Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix, whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather. Just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand, when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar." Harry swallowed. "Yes, 13.5 inches. You. Curious indeed how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible. Yes, but great." Harry shivered. He wasn't sure he liked Mr. Ollivander too much. He paid 7 gold galleons for his wand, and Mr. Ollivander bowed them from his shop. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky as Harry and Hagrid made their way back down Diagon Alley, back through the wall, back through the leaky cauldron, now empty. Harry didn't speak at all as they walked down the road. He didn't even notice how much people were gawking at them on the underground, laden as they were with all their funny-shaped packages, with the snowy owl asleep in his cage on Harry's lap. Up another escalator, out into Paddington Station. Harry only realized where they were when Hagrid tapped him on the shoulder. "Got time for a bite to eat before your train leaves," he said. He bought Harry a hamburger, and they sat down on plastic seats to eat them. Harry kept looking around. Everything looked so strange somehow. "You're all right, Harry. You're very quiet," said Hagrid. Harry wasn't sure he could explain. He just had the best birthday of his life, and yet he chewed his hamburger, trying to find the words. "Everyone thinks I'm special," he said at last. "All those people in the leaky cauldron, Professor Quirrell, Mr. Ollivander. But I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect great things? I'm famous, and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when the night my parents died." Hagrid leaned across the table. Behind the wild beard and eyebrows he wore a very kind smile. "Don't you worry, Harry. You'll learn fast enough. Everyone starts at the beginning at Hogwarts. You'll be just fine. Just be yourself. I know it's hard. You've been singled out, and that's always hard. But you'll have a great time at Hogwarts. I did. Still do, as a matter of fact." Hagrid helped Harry onto the train that would take him back to the Dursleys, then handed him an envelope. "Your ticket for Hogwarts," he said. "1st of September, King's Cross. It's all on your ticket. Any problems with the Dursleys? Send me a letter with your owl. She'll know where to find me. See you soon, Harry." The train pulled out of the station. Harry wanted to watch Hagrid until he was out of sight. He rose in his seat and pressed his nose against the window, but he blinked, and Hagrid had gone. All right. That is chapter 5 done. Very long chapter. And now I'm going to take a 15-minute break. Perfect. Okay. So we're getting back into it. We're going to start chapter 6, which I think is also a sort of long chapter. It's not as long as Diagon Alley, but it's still pretty long. But that's okay, because we're finally on our way to Hogwarts, and we're going to meet Ron Weasley for the very first time. So it's going to be a good chapter. Okay. Chapter 6. The Journey from Platform 9 3/4. Harry's last month with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was now so scared of Harry he wouldn't stay in the same room, while Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, they didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, they acted as though any chair with Harry in it were empty. Although this was an improvement in many ways, it did become a bit depressing after a while. Harry kept to his room, which, with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he had found in a history of magic. His school books were very interesting. He lay on his bed, reading late into the night, Hedwig swooping in and out of the open window as she pleased. It's something very Hermione-ish of him to do. He's all interested now, but later he's not going to be so interested. Later it's going to be homework. I'd be reading these books. I'd be interested. It was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come in to vacuum anymore, because Hedwig kept bringing back dead mice. Every night before he went to sleep, Harry ticked off another day on the piece of paper he had pinned to the wall, counting down to September the 1st. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King's Cross Station the next day, so he went down to the living room where they were watching a quiz show on television. He cleared his throat to let them know he was there, and Dudley screamed and ran from the room. Uncle Vernon? Uncle Vernon grunted to show he was listening. I need to be at King's Cross tomorrow to go to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon grunted again. Would it be all right if you gave me a lift? Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes. Thank you. He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke. Funny way to get to a wizard's school with a train. Magic carpets all got punctures, have they? Actually, there are magic carpets, and there are wizards who use them. Just not English wizards. It's actually mostly Middle Eastern and Indian wizards who use magic carpets, but they do use them. Harry didn't say anything. Where is this school, anyway? I don't know, said Harry, realizing this for the first time. I believe it's in the Scottish Highlands. At least that's where they film it. That's where they portray it in the movies, is in the Scottish Highlands. It's never actually specified in here, but I think J.K. Rowling does confirm somewhere that it's somewhere in Scotland. He pulled the ticket Hagrid had given him out of his pocket. I just take the train from platform 9 3/4 at 11 o'clock, he said. His aunt and uncle stared. Platform what? 9 3/4. 9 3/4. Don't talk rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. There is no platform 9 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking, said Uncle Vernon. Howling mad, the lot of them. You'll see. You just wait. All right, we'll take you to King's Cross. We're going up to London tomorrow anyway, or I wouldn't have bothered. Why are you going to London? Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly. Taking Dudley to the hospital, growled Uncle Vernon. Got to have that ruddy tail removed before he goes to Smeltings. Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. Also, there's more than one platform. There's if you're familiar with the site Pottermore, they have a lot of these extra tidbits that I talk about, and more, much more, in much greater detail. And they do talk about platform 9 3/4. They talk about how there's actually a platform 9 1/2 and platform 9 1/4, and how there's other platforms too, but they're used less frequently. This is the standard for getting to Hogwarts, platform 9 3/4. Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning and was too excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and pulled on his jeans because he didn't want to walk into the station in his wizard robes. He'd change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list yet again to make sure he had everything he needed, saw that Hedwig was shut safely in her cage, and then paced the room, waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge, heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car, and Petunia had talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and they had set off. They reached King's Cross at 10:30. Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk onto a cart and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought he was strangely kind until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platforms with a nasty grin on his face. "Well, there you are, boy. Platform 9, platform 10. Nothing in between." Another reference to a Harry Potter musical. Actually, a Harry Potter sequel. It's the second one. Platform 9, platform 10. No in between. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, but they don't seem to have built it yet, do they? He was quite right, of course. There is a big plastic number 9 over one platform and a big plastic number 10 over the other next to it. And in the middle, nothing at all. "Have a good term," said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away. All three of them were laughing. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks. Because of Hedwig, he'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard, but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard had never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, Harry asked for the train that left at 11 o'clock, but the guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the arrivals board, he had 10 minutes left to get on the train to Hogwarts. Ugh. And he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizard money, and a large owl. Oh my goodness, how desperate that is. Thank goodness there are other wizards there, and that they happen to use language that he understands so that he knows they're wizards. But you would think that there's so many students that end up going to Hogwarts that don't know how to get onto the platform. And you would think that they would ask a lot of the guards, that the guards would get on every September 1st a bunch of kids asking about how to get to Hogwarts. And again, I think of the play, a Harry Potter musical, a Harry Potter sequel. Platform 9 3/4. There's no such thing. You're the 700th kid to ask me that. There has to be several kids. There's no way this is the first time this has ever happened. Yeah, serious overstep in not telling Harry how to get onto this platform. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something you had to do, like tapping the third brick on the left to get into Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the ticket inspector's stand between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying, packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung round. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of him, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his cart after them. They stopped, and so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying. "Now, what's the platform number?" said the boy's mother. "Wouldn't she know? Don't they do this? Hasn't she done this a million times already with her other kids? She would know this by now, wouldn't she? It's not like the number changes. It's the same every year." 9 3/4, piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand. "Mom, can't I go? You're not old enough, Ginny. Now be quiet." "All right, Percy, you go first." Also another connection, platform 9 3/4. We're introduced to it here, and it becomes more significant in the last Harry Potter book. Also, Harry sends his own kids to Hogwarts from platform 9 3/4. What looked like the oldest boy marched toward platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched, careful not to blink in case he missed it, but just as the boy reached the dividing barrier between the two platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last backpack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. "Fred, you next," the plump woman said. "I'm not Fred, I'm George," said the boy. "Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George?" "Sorry, George, dear." "I'm joking. I am Fred," said the boy, and off he went. You'll notice that Fred is the more mischievous one. I know Fred and George are both mischievous, but Fred is slightly more outgoing and slightly more, I don't know. He's the more adventurous one out of Fred and George. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done so because a second later he had gone. But how had he done it? For the third brother was walking briskly toward the barrier. He was almost there, and then, quite suddenly, he wasn't anywhere. There was nothing else for it. "Excuse me," Harry said to the plump woman. "Hello, dear," she said. "First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new too." She pointed at the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall, thin, and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. "Yes," said Harry. The thing is, I don't know how to get onto the platform," she said kindly. And Harry nodded. "Not to worry," she said. "All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop and don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. That's actually how it works. It's a confidence thing. Only wizards would be able to walk through a wall because only wizards would be confident that it would be possible. Which begs the question, could muggles do it if I were to walk in there? If I were to try it, when I pass through. If I truly believed that I could. Best do it at a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go on. Go now before run. Okay, said Harry. He pushed his trolley around and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk toward it. People jostled him on their way to the platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into that barrier, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his cart, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The cart was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the barrier had been, with the words Platform 9 3/4 on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every color wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to one another in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out of the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his cart down the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, "Gran, I've lost my toad again." "Oh, Neville!" he heard the old woman sigh. A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. "Give us a look, Lee. Go on." The boy lifted the lid of a box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hedwig inside first, and then started to shove and heave his trunk toward the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot. Okay. Want a hand? It was one of the red-haired twins he'd followed through the barrier. "Yes, please," Harry panted. "Oi, Fred! Come here and help!" With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was at last tucked away in a corner of the compartment. "Thanks," said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. "What's that?" said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar. "Blimey," said the other twin. "Are you?" "He is," said the first twin. "Aren't you?" he added to Harry. "What?" said Harry. "Harry Potter," chorused the twins. "Oh, him," said Harry. "I mean, yes, I am." The two boys gawked at him, and Harry felt himself turning red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating in through the train's open door. "Fred, George, are you there?" "Coming, Mum." It's funny. It says Mom. I say Mum because it's English. That's a British accent, but it says Mom here. I'm pretty sure it's, even though I have the American editions of all the books, I'm pretty sure it's Mum every book after this. I bet it's different here because there's actually a distinct British version because they had to change the title for the American version. And so they probably changed every single phrase that's possibly British turned into American. So instead of Mum, it's Mom, but I say Mum. It's not that complicated to figure out what Mum means. With the last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could watch the red-haired family on the platform and hear what they were saying. Their mother had just taken out her handkerchief. "Ron, you've got something on your nose." The youngest boy tried to jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose. "Mom, get it off." He wiggled free. "Ah, is Ickle Ronnie got something on his nosy?" said one of the twins. "Shut up," said Ron. "Where's Percy?" said their mother. "He's coming now." The eldest boy came striding into sight. He had already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny silver badge on his chest with the letter P on it. Is this his first year as a prefect? It might be. "Can't stay long, Mother," he said. "I'm up front. The prefects have got 2 compartments to themselves." "Oh, are you a prefect, Percy?" said one of the twins with an air of great surprise. "You should have said something. We had no idea." "Hang on. I think I remember him saying something about it," said the other twin. "Once or twice, a minute, all summer." "Oh, shut up," said Percy, the prefect. "How come Percy gets new robes anyway?" said one of the twins. "Because he's a prefect," said their mother fondly. "All right, dear. Well, have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there." She kissed Percy on the cheek and he left. Then she turned to the twins. "Now you two. This year, you behave yourselves. If I get one more owl telling me you've blown up a toilet or blown up a toilet. We've never blown up a toilet. Great idea, though. Thanks, Mum. That's not funny. And look after Ron. Don't worry. Ickle Ronnikins is safe with us." "Shut up," said Ron again. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it. "Hey, Mom, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train?" Harry leaned back quickly so they couldn't see him looking. "You know that black-haired boy who was near us in the station? Know who he is?" "Who?" "Harry Potter." Harry heard the little girl's voice. "Oh, Mum, can I go on the train and see him, Mum? Oh, please." "That's my girl." "You've already seen him, Ginny, and the poor boy isn't something you goggle at the zoo." "Is he really, Fred? How do you know?" "Asked him. Saw his scar. It's really there. Like lightning." "Poor dear. No wonder he was alone. I wondered. He was ever so polite when he asked how to get onto the platform." "Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what you-know-who looks like?" Their mother suddenly became very stern. "I forbid you to ask him, Fred." "No, don't you dare. As though he needs reminding of that on his first day at school." "All right, keep your hair on." A whistle sounded. "Hurry up," the mother said, and the 3 boys clambered onto the train. Yeah, all this happened in 10 minutes. Remember when Harry said he had 10 minutes when he first got here? They leaned out of the window for her to kiss them goodbye, and their younger sister began to cry. "Don't, Ginny. We'll send you loads of owls." Oh, jeez. We're already back at the beginning of the soundtrack. "We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat." "George!" "Only joking, Mum." The train began to move. Harry saw the boys' mother waving and their sister, half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed. Then she fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses flashed past the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know what he was going to, but it had to be better than what he was leaving behind. The door of the compartment slid open, and the youngest red-headed boy came in. "Anyone sitting there?" he asked, pointing at the seat opposite Harry. "Everywhere else is full." Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry and then looked quickly out of the window, pretending he hadn't looked. Harry saw he still had a black mark on his nose. "Hey, Ron." The twins were back. "Listen, we're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there." "Right," mumbled Ron. Ron doesn't want to go anywhere near that tarantula. Ron is he's a huge arachnophobe. So, "Harry," said the other twin, "did we introduce ourselves? Fred and George Weasley, and this is Ron, our brother. See you later, then." "Bye," said Harry and Ron. The twins slid the compartment door shut behind them. "Are you really Harry Potter?" Ron blurted out. Harry nodded. "Oh. Well, I thought it might be one of Fred and George's jokes," said Ron. "And have you really got... you know?" He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his bangs to show the lightning scar. Ron stared. "So that's where you know who?" "Yes," said Harry, "but I can't remember it." "Nothing?" said Ron eagerly. "Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else." "Wow," said Ron. He sat and stared at Harry for a few moments, then, as though he had suddenly realized what he was doing, he looked quickly out of the window again. "Are all your family wizards?" asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him, which probably what probably starts their friendship is how interested they are in each other. They're equals in a lot of ways too. Yes, I think so, said Ron. "I think Mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him." "So you must have known loads of magic already." The Weasleys were clearly one of those old wizarding families the pale boy in Diagon Alley had talked about. Yes and no. I doubt Draco had the Weasleys in mind when he was talking about that. "I heard you went to live with Muggles," said Ron. "What are they like?" "Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle and cousin are, though. Wish I'd had 3 wizard brothers." "5, said Ron. For some reason he was looking gloomy. "I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left. Bill was head boy and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot, but they still get really good marks, and everyone thinks they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others. But if I do, it's no big deal, because they did it first. You never get anything new, either, with 5 brothers. I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat." See, Ron doesn't even have his own wand, which is interesting, because wands choose the wizard, remember? There wasn't a wand that chose him. And I wonder, Charlie's old wand, does it work as well for Ron? But it's okay. Ron will get a new wand next book. He'll have to. But yeah, no, that is really interesting. You get the entirety of Ron's character arc right there in that one paragraph. He essentially tells you every single one of his insecurities in that one paragraph, and everything that it shapes who he is for the rest of the books. All based on these insecurities that he has right here. Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat gray rat, which was asleep. "His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. He hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an owl from my dad for being made a prefect, but they couldn't have... I got Scabbers instead." Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much because he went back to staring out of the window. Harry didn't think there was anything wrong with not being able to afford an owl. After all, he'd never had any money in his life until a month ago, and he told Ron so, all about having to wear Dudley's old clothes and never getting proper birthday presents. This seemed to cheer Ron up. Yeah, and if Harry had been raised in the wizarding world, he might not have been friends with Ron because he would have been a very different person, and they would have little in common, probably. "And until Hagrid told me, I didn't know anything about being a wizard or about my parents or Voldemort." Ron gasped. "What?" said Harry. "You said you know whose name," said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed. "I'd have thought you, of all people." "I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying the name," said Harry. I just never knew you shouldn't. You see what I mean? I've got loads to learn. I bet, he added, voicing for the first time something that had been worrying him a lot lately. I bet I'm the worst in the class. No. You won't be. There's loads of people who come from Muggle families. A lot more than you'd think. And they learn quick enough. While they had been talking, the train had carried them out of London. Now they were speeding past fields full of cows and sheep. They were quiet for a time, watching the fields and lanes flick past. Around 12:30, there was a great clattering outside the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their door and said, "Anything off the cart, dears?" Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink again, and he muttered that he'd brought sandwiches. Harry went out into the corridor. This is what happens when you give an 11-year-old money, okay? He had never had any money for candy from with the Dursleys, and now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver, dude, this needs to last your whole school term. I wouldn't be spending it on candy. With gold and silver, he was ready to buy as many Mars bars. Oh, there won't be any Mars bars. Mars bars are particularly English chocolate bars. I think you still can get them in America, but they're not nearly as popular as he could carry, but the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Bertie Bott's every flavored beans, Drooble's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze knuts. Interesting detail, to mention exactly how much everything cost. Ron stared as Harry, because we don't have any context, like, we don't know how much money that would cost in Muggle money, though you could easily figure it out. There's actually a calculator, or at least, maybe not a calculator, but you can find out how much it's worth converting Muggle money and Wizarding money. So you could probably figure out how much that is. I don't really care, so I don't know, and I won't care. I probably won't bother to find out. Maybe should I? No, that's math. No, thank you. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it onto an empty seat. Hungry, are you? Starving, said Harry, taking a large bite out of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches inside. He pulled one of them apart and said, "She always forgets. I don't like corned beef." "Swap you for one of those," said Harry, holding up a pasty. "Go on." "You don't want this. It's all dry," said Ron. "She hasn't got much time," he added quickly. "You know, with 5 of us." "It's not a problem." "Go on, have a pasty," said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling, sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all Harry's pasties, cakes, and candies. The sandwiches lay forgotten. Have a good night, Julia. What are these? Harry asked Ron, holding up a pack of chocolate frogs. They're not really frogs, are they? He was starting to feel that nothing would surprise him. No, said Ron. But see what the card is. I'm missing a gripper. What? Oh, of course you wouldn't know. Chocolate frogs have cards inside them, you know, to collect famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I haven't gotten a gripper or Ptolemy. Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card. It showed a man's face. He wore half-moon glasses, had a long crooked nose, and flowing silver hair, beard, and mustache. Underneath this picture was the name Albus Dumbledore. I don't think... In the movie, the chocolate frog actually popped out of the box and jumps up on the window. That doesn't happen in the book, but I believe it happened in the movie, and I actually wrote this in my paper, that, I believe it was the movie's attempt to show more of the magical world. They wanted to put as much magic and whimsy in the movie as possible to reflect the nature of the book, the spirit of the book, even though that actual detail didn't happen in the book. Maybe I'll read that paper on stream or something someday. Maybe. That'd be fun. Fun for me. It might not be fun for you, but it'd be fun for me. So this is Dumbledore, said Harry. Don't tell me you've never heard of Dumbledore, said Ron. Can I have a frog? I might get a gripper. Thanks. Harry turned over his card and read, Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts. Considering but many of the greatest wizards of modern times, Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music and 10-pin bowling. I forgot that detail. Harry turned the card back over and saw, to his astonishment, that Dumbledore's face had disappeared. He's gone. Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day, said Ron. He'll be back. No, I've got Morgana again, and I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start collecting. Ron's eyes strayed to the pile of chocolate frogs waiting to be unwrapped. Help yourself, said Harry. But in, the Muggle world, people just stay put in photos. Do they? What, they don't move at all? Ron sounded amazed. Weird! Harry stared as Dumbledore sidled back into the picture on his card and gave him a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating... Oh my gosh, I just had a sudden terrifying thought. If you had pictures that could move, you wouldn't want to put them up in your bedroom or your bathroom, would you? That'd be like a weird invasion of privacy, wouldn't it? It just occurred to me. Anyway, that'd be really strange if your pictures moved. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs and looking at the famous witches and wizards cards, but Harry couldn't keep his eyes off them. Soon he had not only Dumbledore and Morgana, but Hengist of Woodcraft, Alberic Grunion, Circe, Paracelsus, I don't know, and Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from the Druidess Cleodna, maybe. Cleodna, I don't know, who was scratching her nose to open a bag of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. You want to be careful with those, Ron warned Harry. When they say every flavor, they mean every flavor. You get all the ordinary ones like chocolate and peppermint and marmalade, but then you get spinach and liver and tripe. George reckons he had a booger-flavored one once. Ron picked up a green bean, looked at it carefully, and bit into a corner. Ugh! See? Sprouts! They had a good time eating the every-flavored beans. Harry had toast, coconut, baked bean, strawberry, curry, grass, coffee, sardine, and even brave enough to nibble the end of a funny gray one Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be pepper. The countryside, now flying past the window, was becoming wilder. The neat fields had gone. Now there were woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. There was a knock on the door of their compartment, and the round-faced boy Harry had passed on platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful. Sorry, he said, but have you seen a toad at all? When they shook their heads, he wailed, I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me. He'll turn up, said Harry. Yes, said the boy miserably. Well, if you see him... He left. Actually, Neville's toad actually does get away at some point, and we never see him again. But I don't remember what point that is. Maybe we'll pay attention. Maybe the 5th one. Like, he pays more attention to his Membless Membletonia, and that's probably when the toad ditches. Or it could be before that, and that's why he got the Membless Membletonia. I don't know. We'll see. Let's pay attention to that. We'll try to pay attention to that. Don't know why he's so bothered, said Ron. If I'd brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk. I don't know. If you loved it, who cares? If he loves his toad, who cares? Don't judge him for that. The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap. He might have died and you wouldn't have known the difference, said Ron in disgust. I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make it more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you. Look. He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered-looking wand.
Welcome to AutoZone.
Hush, AutoZone. Don't care. It was chipped in places and something white was glinting at the end. Unicorn hairs nearly poking out. Anyway. He had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one," she said. She had a bossy sort of voice, lots of bushy brown hair, and rather large front teeth. "We've already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand. "Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see it then." She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. All right." He cleared his throat. "Sunshine daisies, butter mellow, turn this stupid fat rat yellow." We don't see rhyming spells in the books, so I'm not surprised this one doesn't work, because I don't think they actually do work. So I don't think any other spell like this exists in Harry Potter. He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbers stayed gray and fell fast asleep. "Are you sure that's a real spell?" said the girl. "Well, it's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter. But I was ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is. I've learned all our course books by heart, of course. I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you?" She said all this very fast. Harry looked at Ron and was relieved to see, by his stunned face, that he hadn't learned all the course books by heart either. "I'm Ron Weasley," Ron muttered. "Harry Potter," said Harry. "Are you really?" said Hermione. "I know all about you, of course. I've got a few extra books from background reading, and you're in modern magic history, and the rise and fall of the dark arts, and great wizarding events of the 20th century. "Am I?" said Harry, feeling dazed. "Goodness, didn't you know? I'd have found out everything I could if it was me," said Hermione. "Do either of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it. But I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyway, we'd better go and look for Neville's toad. You two had better change, you know. I expect we'll be there soon." And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it," said Ron. He threw his wand back into his trunk. "Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud." "What house are your brothers in?" asked Harry. "Gryffindor," said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling on him again. "Mum and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin." "Oh, I don't know." Yikes. "That's the house you know who was in." "Yeah," said Ron. He flopped back into his seat, looking depressed. "You know, I think the ends of Scabbers' whiskers are a bit lighter," said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off of houses. "So what do your other brothers do now that they've left, anyway?" Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he'd finished school. "Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts," said Ron. "Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet, but I don't suppose you get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault. In the movie, this happened way later." Harry stared. "Really? What happened to them?" "Nothing. That's why it's such a big deal. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad says it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get round Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd." Another connection between, the fact that Gringotts is mentioned here and in the last one, but also there was a theft related to you-know-who. Let's see. But they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like this happens, in case you know who's behind it. Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you-know-who was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of entering the magical world, but he had been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying. That's good. Stick to that. "What's your Quidditch team?" Ron asked. I don't know any," Harry confessed. "What?" Ron looked dumbfounded. "Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world." And he was off, explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just taking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again, but it wasn't Neville the Toadless Boy or Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry... Oh, yeah, I forgot all about this. I forgot this ever happened. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Mullins's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. "Is it true," he said, "they're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment? So it's you, is it?" "Yes," said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean. Standing on either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. "Oh, this is Crabbe, and this is Goyle," said the pale boy carelessly, noticing where Harry was looking. "And my name's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snicker. Draco Malfoy looked at him. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. "I think I can tell who the wrong sorts are for myself, thanks," he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks. "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter," he said slowly. "Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go to the same way as your parents." They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you. Both Harry and Ron stood up. "Say that again," Ron said, his face as red as his hair. "Oh, you're going to fight us, are you?" Malfoy sneered. "Unless you get out now," said Harry, more bravely than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him or Ron. "But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still seem to have some." Goyle reached toward the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward, but before he'd so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his finger, sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling, and when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all 3 of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking among the sweets, or perhaps they'd heard footsteps, because a second later Hermione Granger had come in. "What has been going on?" she said, looking at the sweets all over the floor and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. "I think he's been knocked out," Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. "No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep." And so he had. "You've met Malfoy before?" Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley. "I've heard of his family," said Ron darkly. "They were some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side." He turned to Hermione. "Can we help you with something?" "You'd better hurry up and put your robes on. I've just been up to the front to ask the conductor, and he says we're nearly there." "There's a conductor? Interesting. We never meet him." "And I don't think he's ever mentioned again." You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there." "Scabbers has been fighting, not us," said Ron, scowling at her. "Would you mind leaving while we change?" "All right. I only came in here because people outside are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors," said Hermione in a sniffy voice. "And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know?" Ron glared at her as she left. Harry peered out of the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forest under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him. You could see his sneakers underneath them. A voice echoed through the train. "We'll be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately." Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way toward the door and out onto a tiny, dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years? First years over here? All right there, Harry. I just thought of something. They change into their school robes here, but in all the other books they don't. Do they? I know they don't in the movie. They do. That's interesting. They're definitely not in their school robes on the train or when they get off, but all of a sudden they end up back at the Great Hall in their robes. So maybe they do. Maybe they do. Anyway. Hagrid's big hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me. Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark on either side of them that Harry thought there must be thick trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toes, sniffed once or twice. You'll get your first sight of Hogwarts in a sec, Hagrid called over his shoulder. Just round this bend here. There was a loud ooh. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake, perched atop a high mountain. On the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. No more in forward, old boat, Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione. Everyone in, shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. Right then. Forward! And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. Heads down, yelled Hagrid as the first boats reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle until they reached a kind of underground harbor where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles. Oi, you there! Is this your toad? Said Hagrid, who was checking the boats as people climbed out of them. Treffa! Cried Neville blissfully, holding out his hands. Then they clambered up a passageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge oak front door. Everyone here? You there, still got your toad? Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. It doesn't matter how long you've been away. Hogwarts always welcomes you back as if you never left. And it'll welcome us back next Saturday. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. But we will be back at it next Saturday. I know I said that I wouldn't be, but I was wrong because I thought Christmas was next Saturday. But we will be. We'll be back here at it again next Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube for chapters 7 and 8, where we'll finally be at Hogwarts and things get really interesting. If you are watching this video after the fact, please leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of the video. Please leave a like and click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell icon so you can be notified when I go live and when a video is uploaded. I stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube. On Saturdays, for Storytime Saturday, I live stream at 6 p.m. So join me Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be playing The Sims. Nifty Knitting. I'm doing my Nifty Knitting save file, so come join us there. And be on the lookout for my videos coming up this week. I will be reading Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol for Christmas with one stave a day. So Monday, probably sometime in the evening, there will be a stave 1, and I will go all the way till it's finished on Christmas Day. I think that's everything. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical evening. Bye-bye.